My last video, I checked my blog and somebody had looked up the blog post I did on Basil J. Hiley, giving a talk on quantum consciousness or what he thought was quantum consciousness. And that was actually a talk that got posted after he passed on. Um, I think it was December 2024. And for some reason, the Pari Center had not posted his talk yet. They held it back. Anyway, that's like one of his best talks. Rewatching it on his explanation of non-locality as what they call proto-consciousness in quantum physics. And in terms of the non-commutative mathematics, you're using matrices as a non-commutative quantum algebra, and when you set that up with any kind of experimental situation, you get the diagonal in the matrix mathematics, and the diagonal is like your actual particle measurement. And what he's saying is that basically that's the active information, what David Bohm called active information. But then the off diagonal is actually the non-commutative, non-local information of the environment, and that's what Basil J. Hiley calls that passive information. And the irony is that in non-Western philosophy and non-dualism, this what Basil J. Hiley is calling passive information is really what, you know, like in Buddhism or Taoism or in Hinduism, they identify this with the female property. It's whether you want to be like biologically essentialist or whatever, but essentially they call it the emptiness or the void. And in Taoist philosophy, in that if you read the book Taoist Alchemy or Taoist Yoga, Alchemy and Immortality, they call it the absolute void. So there's the relative void, and that the relative void is when you see light while you're meditating, like with your eyes closed. But the absolute void is when you see light with your eyes open, you start to see auras around people, and you start communicating with spirits or seeing ghosts. Um, at that stage is when your third eye has opened up, and you feel a strong magnetic force that's like a anti-gravitational force. You can feel it pulling you up, and it emanates through the center of your body, the central core. So it emanates out of the third eye, but it originates from the right side of the heart, and then it's stored in the gut. And after this experience in reality becomes holographic. And Basil J. Hiley even talks about this as a holographic reality, and he says he worked with Carl Pribram, which is pretty fascinating because that book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, is a combination of Carl Pribram's holographic brain model along with David Bohm, using that metaphor of a holograph. And the reason it's a metaphor, as Eddie Oceans points out in his creation of quantum psychology, is that the hologram is still using classical physics, and so it's using standard Fourier analysis. But it was Heisenberg who discovered that the energy of the observables, which are the photons being emitted or absorbed, are actually non-commutative. And so the frequency, when you change the order of the frequency in the exponentials, then it changes the value of the energy. And so the momentum is directly proportional to the frequency. And then De Broglie figured out that if that's true, that as the frequency goes up with the momentum, then it's goes against relativity, because in relativity, as the momentum goes towards the speed of light, then time gets bigger, but frequency is inverse to time. And so when scientists will want to say, well, it's a wave, the Schrodinger is a wave equation, um, but that's only if you exclude relativity, and De Broglie was critiquing relativity. And the interesting thing about relativity, it's all based on observations. It's based on the external observer, so you don't have simultaneity of time anymore in relativity, but in non-locality, you still have simultaneity as action at a distance. And this is what freaked out Einstein and why he called it spooky action at a distance. And then Olivier Costa de Beauregard, who was the protege of Louis de Broglie, said, well, if this is true, there has to be precognition, and that precognition is actually the foundation of observations. And he tried to argue it was a retrocausal relativistic model, and this is what Jacques Sarfati still tries to argue, but in fact, the noncommutative model is inherently quantum, based on the frequency from the original observation of Heisenberg, that it's the transitional frequencies that are non-commutative, and it's before any operator. In quantum physics, you're using an operator mathematics from the what do you call it, the Hamiltonian. And so anyway, this idea of passive information is really captures the Eastern approach to reality, where, I mean, if you want to call it prayer, when you sit with your eyes closed, but in fact, it's a whole it's an ancient science of mind-body transformation that Taoism really well described, starting from the body, the physiology. So you have the yin jing, and then yang jing is the yin qi, and then the wan qi is from the yang qi, and then when you have the yang qi build up, it activates the wan shen, and when you keep building up your wan qi, then you activate the yang shen, and then the yang shen brings you back, to the wan jing. So then eventually you have an integration of wan jing and wang qi and wan shen, and when you do that, you can like vaporize your whole body, which is pretty much the ultimate goal, to return to the wan qi. So it starts with wan qi, but it's part of the shen. It would be the light, the holographic coherent light, but the wan shen is like the light of no light. So when you turn the light around, it's this listening process based on logical inference, and that logical inference really is the passive information that is beyond all perceptions, but yet it is still information that they also call formless awareness in Eastern philosophy, because you can't visualize it. And in Western science, everything's based on seeing is believing as an external measurement, external observation. You have to be able to repeat it. If you can't repeat the results, then it's not real. So you have this totally different definition of reality in non-dualism, and the non-commutativity is this inherent complementary opposites as a process, which is sort of a biological essentialism. And that's why, like the Platonic philosophy is based on symmetry. So it's exact opposite of Platonic philosophy, because you're relying on asymmetry as the non-commutative process. So it's really like way more radical than any kind of political system in the West, or even any kind of like psychological system or physiological system. And then Basil J. Hiley said that non-commutativity completely changes our understanding of quantum biology, because the non-commutativity enables this quantum coherence to self-amplify into the macro scale, because of the non-commutativity, there's no need to have any kind of collapse of a wave function. So it's very possible where you can have these like paranormal or spiritual phenomenon um, as occurs in non-Western meditation and yoga or whatever, or shamanism. But of course, like it's easy for the ego to get diluted, the spiritual ego, and to have tricksters and um so yeah, the quantum biology is obviously a difficult thing to study in terms of Western science, especially if it's like defined by non-commutativity. Also when it's relies on this passive information, because the whole concept of passive information is that the whole is greater than the parts, and so something could be happening that you can't perceive, but then it manifests later on. And this is kind of what they call karma. You know, karma in Indian philosophy is basically this concept where the energy is manifesting based on something that happened before, but then something else happens, and it's all synchronized, like secretly behind the scenes, and you can't control it. And it creates like um, either like miracles or just like profound synchronicities, and they're not always a good thing. They could be some kind of disaster, because that's just like how karma works. um, but there's always some kind of profound like meaning to it that is the karma manifesting. And the more you meditate, the more you can have these kind of experiences like the synchronicities. You can also start having precognitive dreams. And that's what Christina Donnell's book is all about, the psychotherapist in Minneapolis, her book Transcendent Dreaming. Anyway, I can hear the garbage truck coming. So, yeah, the passive information that Basil J. Hiley explains with the non-commutative mathematics really captures this idea of the non-Western non-dualism as non-locality in the context of non-commutativity. And I mean, he said he didn't understand consciousness. He repeated that over and over. But that when he said that, like you as a Westerner, you think that's what it means, but he meant it in the profound sense.